Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today is the 6th birthday of the Xbox One. Believe it or not, we are really at that point. Now, before we go into it too much, I just want to say thank you for watching this series so far, or, well, series in general, because it's really only 2 videos right now. But if you're unaware, I have been doing this series for a few years. Ever since the consoles both launched, as well as the Wii U's launch, I did unboxings, and then every single year I did some sort of anniversary video, the purpose of which was to talk about what had happened in the previous year for the console, and basically what I thought the future of it was going to be. Now, I just did this with the PlayStation 4 on November 15th, and now it is November 22nd, which is the 6th birthday of the Xbox One. Again, it originally launched on November 22nd, 2013. So, getting that out of the way, obviously it has, man, like I said this in the PS4 video, but man, do you start feeling really old when you get into these kind of numbers. But since we kind of already focused on that, what I want to say here is, much like the PS4, we're at a point in this generation that is, to be honest, not very interesting. Because this is, and for all intents and purposes, has been the final major year of each of these consoles. Now, yes, they still have more time left. They do have a full year left before the next console release, and then time beyond that. So what are you talking about? Let me elaborate. Historically speaking, console generations are really only 4 to 5 years. So this console generation has already exceeded that. And unlike the 7th generation, which set the freak example of being way too long, the Xbox 360, PS3, and the Wii, of being basically a nearly 10-year cycle. That's not normal. Usually it's 4 to 5 years. And this generation, they basically compromised on that and said, okay, we'll give you most of that. Now, 6 years into a console is kind of a rare thing for it to still be dominant. Generally, consoles do not last that long, as I just mentioned, but if they do, there's generally a lot of oddities towards the end. There's really only 3 scenarios that come up by that point. One is the console is on its way out, but they try to squeeze some sort of life out of it to keep it relevant, say the 32X into the Genesis. While Microsoft did ultimately release the Xbox One X, being their zany new upgrade for hardware, and Sony, of course, did the PS4 Pro for the same reason, even that was a couple of years ago. It also might be interesting when we think about this in later generations that when you look back on the original version of the PS4 and the Xbox One that were far more anemic, would they have fallen off way earlier had they not done the advanced versions? Does that essentially mean that that was the version of Microsoft and Sony's 32X, except it succeeded? The second possibility, the console fails and ends abruptly like something like the Amiga CD32. The alternative is the console is successful and therefore they don't really make any more changes. That's where we are. Now, historically speaking, most consoles do all their craziest things in the first couple of years when they're new and they're relevant and, most importantly, are responding to consumer feedback. Like I said, you have fallout from that. Either you fail or you stay in. Microsoft, by all intents and purposes, should have failed with the Xbox One. It had one of the most debacled launches of all time. And if it were anybody else, it would be in the ash heap of history along with the Amiga CD32, the Apple Pippin, and the Atari Jaguar. That's honestly where it should have been. But because of the deep pockets of Microsoft and because they were so determined to turn it around, they were able to do that and ultimately survive. Thus eventually making it a success in the sense, at least in North America, where it does have some relevance, or it has relevance. In Europe it has some, in Japan it has essentially none. Most overseas markets it really does poorly. In fact, there's really only one region outside of Europe or North America that it even exists, which is basically Australia. Now that's kind of traditional for an American-made console. It's not really unheard of, particularly with the Xbox brand. But, in general, we are at the phase of a console's lifespan, because this doesn't happen very often, but there have been examples throughout history where a console has been successful and its successor is coming up. That is not unheard of. And traditionally, within the last year of that is kind of like being the last year where you're a country and you're fighting a war that you know you're going to lose, but you still have to fight it out for about 6 months. That's really where the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 are. And we are right now, at this moment in time that this video is coming out, we are at the equivalency of the Battle of the Bulge. The last big push for both the Xbox One and the PS4 is this holiday season. That's their last real chance to make any serious money to get into the homes and just earn some cash. Because I promise you, right after the holiday season, we're going to start getting a lot more information about PS5 and Project Scarlet. Now, we already talked a lot about, obviously in the PlayStation 4 video, we talked a lot about PS5, and we know a lot more about that because Sony's been a lot more transparent about it. We don't know as much about Project Scarlet, but we'll get back to that. So, when you digest all that, what does it really say about the last year of the Xbox One? And the honest truth is, not much. The last year, it was fine. It was very stable. It was very vanilla. And that was exactly what it was supposed to be. It's just supposed to be the brand ambassador that just kind of keeps the masses happy. And by that point in time, like I said, you've either fallen off completely, you try something totally insane, which they're not doing, or you've figured out the formula and you know how to fly the plane. And that's exactly what they're doing. So really, the only things that really happened was you got major games, of course, you got the traditional third-party exclusives, and you got a lot of stuff pumped out by Microsoft. Microsoft has not been very good about exclusive content, as they've made very clear in their manifesto, which is they don't really want exclusive content. They want stuff that Sony doesn't get, but that's about it. So their biggest one was like Gears of War 5, which was fine, but it was also on PC. That's not what the Xbox brand is about anymore. It's not about having exclusive content. It's about a solid gaming experience that has the maximum amount of games, and they can't really help it if Sony and Nintendo don't necessarily want to work with them, though Nintendo is kind of coming around in some ways, but that's a discussion for another time. So anyway, the last year, really, as far as like crazy things, there wasn't much. There was just kind of the bigger announcement about Project Scarlet, announcing some of its details, as well as frankly, ending the backwards compatibility program. That was like the biggest thing they did this year, which was a net negative. But to be fair, I didn't expect it to go as long as it did. They never earned money off that program of having Xbox 360 content and even original Xbox content, which ended up with either 40 or 42, depending on how you count it, games ultimately available on the Xbox One to play. Plus a massive catalog of Xbox 360 stuff. In their defense, they really did that just as a PR move, just to be like, hey, we care about the past, we want to put all our stuff under one roof, that was kind of the point, blah, 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 and we're going to introduce that philosophy into the next generation. They took the time to put in like all sorts of high-definition patches and 4K assets, etc., to particularly original Xbox games, but a bunch of 360 games even had that as well. And also taking the time to even upgrade Xbox One games with various patches for 4K compatibility. That's a lot of what they've been doing, is like minor updates and things like that, just to kind of keep this plane flying forward. That's really the only way to kind of say it. And this holiday season is just, again, like, hey, let's push it out there. The other thing they did that was odd, but not that odd when you think about it, was they released a version of the Xbox One Slim here, or S, without a disc tray. That was intentional. They wanted to try a diskless version. Now, the obvious reason they did that is they're trying to test the waters to see what the fan base would react to if they released a console that did not support physical media. At this point in time, we know the PlayStation 5 will use some sort of disc. I've heard rumors of it being some sort of 100 gigabyte disc, which is an improvement, as Blu-ray, believe it or not, is a really old tech at this point. Like, it first became consumer viable in 2006. It's 13-year-old technology that we're still putting into modern consoles. It needs to go. As much as I love Blu-rays, it's time to upgrade to the next thing, if there is a next thing, which is another issue entirely. So supposedly a 100 gigabyte disc might be a thing, which would help solve the problem, sort of, in some cases. But the truth is, there's patches for games that are bigger than the entire disc capacity of a Blu-ray, which is insane. But that's where we're at. So the Xbox One discless version was a somewhat of an obvious attempt to see how the market would react. But unfortunately, you might be surprised from my perspective, as I am very pro-physical media, I don't think that was actually a very good litmus test to see how the fan base would react. Simply because, A, it's a console that already exists. The people who are going to buy an Xbox One discless is mostly like YouTube reviewers, not including myself. I had no interest in owning one because I don't support digital media that way, or digital gaming that way specifically. But it really wasn't meant to appeal to the masses. And the way I kind of want to put that in perspective is like, if Sega had released a version of the Genesis that only used the Sega channel for game content, I don't think it would have done well, because you couldn't have borrowed your friends' games, you couldn't have rented your friends' games, you couldn't buy games, either new or used. Same exact problem existed within the Xbox One. Now granted, it's obviously a much better digital ecosystem than the Sega channel was for the Genesis, but the point is, you could save $50 on the console, sure, But are you getting that back? You have now cut off all of your like affordable options in which to get games. You are solely reliant on the digital marketplace of the Xbox brand. So my point is, while they did that to kind of test the waters, it's at best a poor test to see how the fan base would react. But I do think that's where their heart is. They want to do an all digital platform. They want to do away with physical media, which makes me sad. But at the same time, they learned the lesson from the sins of this generation. Really, as I mentioned before, this console should have failed and fallen into the ash heap of history. With the Bandai Palladium, it should have been there. But the reason it didn't, again, Microsoft deep funding wanted it to survive. And when I say that, I don't mean that the console is bad. I mean that they botched the launch so incredibly that really no one should have stayed on board. If any other company had done that, everybody would have jumped ship. The truth is, consoles are made or broken right at the beginning. They have a big successful burst or they fail out the gate. It's very rare to be able to go from one to the other. Some such examples of that actually occurring was PlayStation 3, failed out of the gate, but Sony was able to cobble it together with enough funding to hold it alive. Sega, on the other hand, came out of the gate strong, at least in North America and Europe, with the Dreamcast, but because they had lost Japan so poorly at the beginning, they really couldn't come out of that nosedive. So there are certain exceptions, but in general, a console comes out strong, like the PlayStation 4, it just kind of stays strong. If a console comes out like horribly, like the PCFX, it stays that way and it gets buried. Sometimes you have, foolish mistakes made along the way where a console comes out and they just decide to make strange choices like Sega did with the Genesis, 32X, Sega CD, all that stuff. But in general, when you have a console that's lasted this long and has been this successful, they've kind of figured out the formula. So they don't want to go into the next 9th generation of consoles and say, okay, let's screw it up by doing this policy that right at the beginning makes everyone hate us. That's why they're not really sure about disc-based media yet or not. Hence, you haven't heard about it, at least at the time I make this video, if Project Scarlet is going to support it. So, I don't know, man. I kind of think they're going to do possibly 2 versions and just see what sticks. We will find out, but that's something we're not really going to know until after the holidays are over, and probably not really until like maybe E3 2020, which could be kind of insane because it could be the year both Sony and Microsoft like really show us everything under the hood, and that it's only a few months away. Again, I will boldly predict that I believe the launch date of PS5 and whatever Project Scarlet's final name is going to be November of 2020, specifically November 13th and November 20th. One will take one spot, one will take the other, I'm not sure which. I kind of feel like Microsoft would take November 20th and just kind of, because they want to do something cutesy with like 2020. Who knows, maybe the next console will be called Xbox 20 because Microsoft doesn't care about numbers, and just call it that, to sync up with some new operating system, or the fact that they traditionally are terrible with that. Who knows? Sony, on the other hand, might do some sort of weird, like, ooh, it's Friday the 13th, get, spooky sale, who knows? But either way, the options are there. So, yeah, when you ask specifically, what is the future of the Xbox One, though? We're not talking about Project Scarlet. We're not talking about the next console. What is the future of Xbox One? We're in the phase now, after this battle of the bulge, as I describe it. The next year, we'll still get good games. We're still going to get big AAA games. Like, the next year will feel very normal. But the truth is, all development cycles from those games are from this year and before, and they will just continue to roll out to kind of, feed the hunger that already exists, while at the same time, developers are going to be primarily focusing their efforts and shifting into the next generation, making sure games are available for that. This is not new. This is how this always works in a successful console cycle. Just prepare yourself. That's what's coming. So the next year of this console will still feel normal. It'll be after that we start getting less and less AAA games, less and less major releases. We get more and more sports games and Just Dances and stuff like that. That's still a while away. That's at least 1.5 years, if not 2 years away. But be ready. Enjoy it. Because this last year has been the last full year of relevance, and the next full year will just be the last year of, significance. Before after that it comes into obscurity or irrelevance almost. Kind of like the way the Wii U was basically in its final death knell there. But yeah, that's honestly, like I said, there's not much else to say about the past year because they just didn't want to rock that boat. They wanted to fly straight, and that's a credit to them. They didn't need to. They came out of the nosedive that they created at the beginning, and they just held a stable path, and now they're just purely setting up for the next generation. That's just how it's going to be. The same with Sony. So it's kind of unfortunate because the last year, to be honest, because they've been successful, there's been no drama, there's been nothing really exciting to talk about. So all you can do now is exactly what they want you to do. Speculate about the future. So that's where we are. So I guess that's kind of it, guys. Please like, comment, subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the previous video. If you can, check out all the other videos I've been doing lately and the stuff I've got coming up soon. Thank you very much for watching. And also, please check out my social descriptions. You know, the description for all the social media stuff, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I hate doing that. You guys know I hate doing that. But please do that. Please check it out. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'll see you all later.